This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so um, so yesterday it was the initial demo session. So where we discussed these agenda points. Okay, so we covered what is performance testing and why performance testing, and we also discussed about a load runner architecture. We also discussed about how to record a simple flow and replay, and we also discussed about the course content, and then we also discussed few question answers. Um, hope I mean whoever is joining today, whoever didn't join yesterday, I request you to go through yesterday's demo session as well, so that you'll get more clarity on what is this course all about and what are we going to learn in the next uh, 35 to 40 sessions. So as discussed yesterday, so I have mentioned some generic definition of performance testing. That is, it's all about checking the performance of an application by applying some load. So I told you what is load yesterday. So what is this load? Load is nothing but the number of users. Okay. So we discussed various examples as well yesterday. So how the load will be applied, what is the component that will take care of generating the load. So in the load runner architecture, in the load runner architecture, uh, in the load runner architecture, the component that will generate or simulate virtual users is load generator. Okay, so hope you guys have seen that. So that I have shared the slides yesterday as well in the session. So in today's session, what we are going to learn is we are going to discuss about types of performance testing. So there are different types of performance testing. So when you onboard any project, when you join any project, in that particular project there might be some different types of testing, performance testing, that you need to execute, okay, or you need to run. So what are those types of performance testing? Do we really run all of these types, or do we run only few of them? Let's see. So I do have slides to explain each of the different types of performance testing, but for sorry, but for today's session I would like to make use of this notepad file. Okay, later on I'll share the slides, but I feel that uh, you know writing down the notes and trying to understand different types of performance testing here will be little bit better. Okay, so first I'll just copy the definition from here so that we all will be on the same page, so we know what is performance testing. So I have noted down the definition here. It's a simple definition. We didn't write any textbook definition or anything like that. So now, in when it comes to different types of performance testing, okay, how we plan, and what are those exactly? So let's try to understand. The first type of test is load test. Okay, the first type of performance test is nothing but the load test. Then you have something called stress test. Then you can also you can write endurance test. You can also call it as endurance or soak or duration test. So you can call with any of these names. Okay, and then you can call you can say scalability test, and then you can say volume test, and then uh, we have something called failover test. Okay, and then there is some generic test that we run before every test is nothing but smoke test. So these are the major types of performance testing. Okay, and then this is a smoke test which we generally execute or run before every test. Okay, so now let's try to understand these major types of tests. In today's session I'm going to explain you these five. Okay, um, and in tomorrow's session I'll be explaining you this, because if you want to understand this failover test, you need to understand few additional concepts like what is a server, what is web server, what is application server, what is database server, and so on. So tomorrow, first thing, we will understand those concepts, and then we will discuss this failover test tomorrow. Okay. So let me explain you the load test. So load test is the first major test that we execute. Okay. In any performance testing project, this is the first major type of test that we execute. Okay. So what do you mean by load test? So before I explain you the load test further, after writing this definition, I would like to add one more statement which is related to performance testing, and that statement is, generally performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. Okay. So performance testing is generally measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. Now, what is this speed? What is this stability? What is this scalability? How these terms are related to these different types of performance tests? We'll try to understand now. So let's begin with load test. Now, load test is nothing but, in simple terms, again, I'm not writing any textbook definition, checking the speed of an application, speed of an application by applying some expected load. Okay, simple. So load test is nothing but checking the speed of an application by applying expected load. So here I just mentioned performance testing is measured in terms of speed, right? So speed is referred here in this load test. What do you mean by this what do you mean by this line? So when you say checking the speed of an application, it means how how fast the user is able to navigate from one page to another page. So for example, I click on this link. Okay. So how fast, how much time it is taking to load, okay, the page, or how fast the user is able to navigate from one page to another page. So it's all about the time, how fast the next page is loading. Okay. So that is speed. It is directly related to speed. So checking the speed of an application by applying some expected load. What is load here? Load is nothing but number of users. So yesterday also I mentioned, if you are testing an application, if you are doing a performance testing for an application with just one user, it is not called as performance testing. You need to apply some load. Okay, load is nothing but number of users. Now who is going to give this number? So let's say number of users for this example, today's example is 500 users. Now, who is going to give this number to us? Can anyone tell? Who is going to give this number to us? Uh, so just for an example, I took like 500 users is nothing but the load. So who is going to give that number to us? Any idea? From where we get this input? So,
Eugen.
no, no. So uh, here,
From
uh,
the client,
from the, yeah, so
from the client,
from the client or from
client,
business
client.
analyst, yeah, from client or
Yeah,
from business analyst, or like the product owner,
that's the
or
one.
someone from the business team, yeah, someone from the business team or the application team. Okay, they have to provide this number to us. Okay, in very rare scenarios they don't provide, but we'll see what if they don't provide, how to calculate the number of users, we'll see later. But most of the applications or majority of the applications, the users will be decided, okay, by the uh, by the product team or the application team. Okay, it could be business analyst or client, or the client themselves, something like that. Now from where they get this number, that is different aspect, we'll see probably day after tomorrow. From where they are getting this number, okay, they are giving this number to us, but how are they deriving this number, how are they getting this number and then sharing it with us? So we'll see that later. So as of now, just try to understand that here load is nothing but number of users, and Just for an example, client will be providing this to us. Now, this is the one more point. This is the first major type of test that we perform or execute. Okay, this is the first major type of test that we perform or execute. Now, how much time we need to run this test? Okay, I wanted to run with 500 users, that's fine. But how much time I need to run? Should I run for 5 minutes? Should I run for 10 minutes, or should I run for 30 minutes? So general standard is general standard is uh, 2 hours, sorry, 1 hour. Okay, we will run for 1 hour steady state. I'll explain you what is steady state later, but just understand that we are going to run this test for 1 hour. Okay, so I'll tell you in in simple words, I'll tell you what is steady state. So let's say I'm running the test with 5 users. I'm running the test with 5 users, just 5 for an example. So first user will come, and then immediately next 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 user will come. So like that, 5 users, they are ready now. All 5 users are up and running. Now from here it will run for 1 hour, and after running for 1 hour, fifth user will stop executing, then fourth user, then third user, then second user, something like this. Okay, so this exact time from here to here, this is called steady state. So so for how long we run the test? We run the test for 1 hour steady state. With how many users? The number of users provided by client. Okay, so that is important. Now what exactly we verify here? We, because it is directly related to speed, we verify the response times. We verify the response times. So what do you mean by response times? See, yesterday when I launched Vusion, okay, when we recorded the script, if you remember yesterday, let me open the script. So what do you mean by response time? So basically what happens is, when I recorded a script, it generated some requests. Yes or no? Yesterday you have seen in our demo session. So I'm opening the recent script, okay, from here directly. So if you see here, this is yesterday's script. This is one request, that is launch. Okay, we discussed this yesterday. This is second request, that is login, and then this is third request, log off. Now, when I replay this script, okay, when I replay this script, so what will happen? It will execute line by line, correct? So when this request, let's say first one, that is launch, when this request, okay, will go to server, to the application server. Obviously, right? There will be some application server from where it need to fetch that page. So, so here, when you are calling this URL, when you are calling this URL, basically it means in this particular domain, in this particular server domain, using this port code, in this folder, there is a HTML page. Get this page for me and load on the UI. So it's simple. It is in simple words. Just get this page for me. That's it. Now, when I replay this script, this request, it will go to server. Like say this is some that local host something server machine, and there we have some web tools folder. In that web tools folder, we have that index.html page here. Okay, the request will go from here, and then we will it will get that page, and then the response, we will get back the response. Okay, so here this is nothing but the request that is going to server, and then this is nothing but the response that we are getting back. So I'll tell you what is server and all that stuff tomorrow, but just for your high level understanding, I just drew this diagram. So here the response time is nothing but the amount of time taken for the request to go to server and then get the response back as well. The round trip. Okay, so how much time it has taken for the request to go to server, process it, and get the request back or get the response back. The whole timing is called response time. So yesterday, when we ran the test, okay, I can run. So you see yesterday when we ran the test, let's say we got these response times. So launch is 0.325 seconds, login is 0.092 seconds, log off is 0.172 seconds is what we got yesterday. Remember? So these are response times. So now you might ask me a question, sir, when I'm running a load test, okay, I need to identify some issues, performance issues or something like that, right? That's why we do performance testing, to identify performance issues, right? No, when you verify the response times, on what basis we are identifying the performance issue? On what basis we are identifying the performance issue? Here, here, in general, the as per the industry standard, the response time that you need to get is less than or equal to 2 seconds. So when you click a link or when you click a button, you should get the response in 2 seconds. Okay, that is the industry standard. But in some projects, but in some projects, the client will be okay for like 3 seconds or 5 seconds also, depending on the complexity of the architecture. Okay, depending on the complexity, depending on the project complexity and all. Okay, client will say I'm okay with 3 seconds or 5 seconds also. But in general, the industry standard is 2 seconds. So let's say client here, let's assume, okay, let's assume client gave 2 seconds as SLA. SLA means service level agreement. Okay, so what do you mean by this? So client is saying that whenever you click a link, okay, anywhere like this. So whenever you click a link or you click a button, I should see the next page loading in 2 seconds. Okay, that is the SLA set. That is a threshold value or the SLA set. Okay, basically it's called SLA. That's the SLA set by the client. Now, when you run the load test, if you are getting these response times, let's say greater than 2 seconds, that means that transaction, or sorry, or that step, okay, because you don't know what is transaction for time being, let's say that step is a kind of failed step for us. So let's say launch is taking 0.3 seconds here as per yesterday's session. Assume login is taking 2.92 seconds. That means this is exceeding 2 seconds, yes or no? That means this will be in our radar. Okay, that means this can be a candidate for performance issue. This can be a candidate for performance issue. So login is exceeding 2 seconds. So we need to check with developer why it is taking 2 seconds. Okay, from our end also we can do some analysis by using some APM tools like AppDynamics or Dynatrace, and then we can also find why exactly it is taking 2 seconds. What is going wrong there? We can also find it from our side. Okay, everyone understood? So I'll repeat. Load test is nothing but it's all about checking the speed of an application by applying some load. Load is nothing but number of users. So this is the first major type of test that we perform, and we run it for 1 hour steady state. We actually verify the response times. The very basic thing that we verify is response times. Okay, how how can you say whether a particular step is passed or failed, or how can you say that there is some performance issue? Okay, on a very basic notes. So it all depends on the SLA that the client has provided, and if any of the step, if it exceeds that SLA, that there can be some performance issue which we need to look into it. Okay, and there are some other key findings that we look into when we run the load test. I'll explain you in detail. Okay, when we actually run the load test, I'll tell you each and everything. But at a very high level, did you understand like what is load test all about? What exactly we do here? Any questions? Did you guys understand?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
this is the first
Yes.
major type of test. Now, let's assume if, okay, now shall we go, no, okay, let's say this is a success. Okay, now, okay, now let's discuss this way. Now you ran that load test. You executed the load test. Now, on what basis you are concluding that the load test is a success or a load test is a failure. You ran the load test. On what basis you are concluding that the load test is a successful test or a failed test? So for that, okay, um, you need to look into few parameters like if the first point, okay, so how do you, I'm writing the question here itself. How do you conclude whether a test is a pass or fail? Overall test. I'm not telling a particular step. Okay. I'm not telling whether launch is pass or login is pass. No. I'm saying the whole test. How do you conclude whether it is pass or fail? No. If okay, simple points. If the total number of failed steps all transactions, okay, see, I'll tell you because we started discussing related to steps and something like that, so I'll tell you in simple words for today. In detail I'll explain in a couple of days, but uh, each step here, like launch is one step, login is one step, log off is one step, right? So launch is one transaction for us, login is one transaction for us. That's the reason it is showing three transactions. See, so launch is one transaction for us, login is one transaction for us, log off is one transaction for us. Do remember this term transaction. I keep using this frequently in our sessions. Okay, so I'll explain you in detail again what is transaction, but hope you got some clarity. So every action that we perform on the application, that could be our transaction. So like launch is one transaction, login is one transaction, like that. So here, if the total number of failed transactions, if the total number of failed transactions are are greater than 2%, okay, then it is a failed test. Okay, we'll discuss this in detail later on. I'll explain in detail, but I'm just telling you at a very high level because I have to conclude, right? You might ask me, sir, how do you know if it is a pass or fail? So I just have to tell some points. So here, the important point is if the total number of failed transactions are greater than 2%, then it's a failed test. For example, I ran the load test for 1 hour. I'm okay. For example, I ran test for uh, 1 hour and I got 1,000 transactions total. Okay, in total, I got total 1,000 transactions. What is 2% of 1,000? What is 2% of 1,000?
200.
No,
20.
20. So 10% is 100, 1% is 10, and then 2% is 10 into 2, 20. So here, if total failed transactions are more than 20, then it's a failed test. Simple, straightforward. Okay, straightforward. Now, when you are running a load test for 1 hour and you got total transactions, okay, you got total transactions. Here you cannot see that because we just ran with one user and all for simple test. But when you run the actual load test, you might get a total transactions, in a big number like this. So if total failed transactions are more than 20 as per this example, it's a failed test. Simple. Now, if if failed transactions are less than 2% and response times are within SLA, then it's a passed test. Did you understand this point? Is this point clear? If total failed transactions are less than 2% and response times, we were discussing about the response times here, right? So if the response times are within the SLA, so if client saying, hey, 2 seconds is the SLA, and in the response times you got everything less than 2 seconds, then it's a pass. Okay. Now, sometimes there can be a partial success also. If failed transactions are less than 2% and response times response times are very little higher than SLA, then it can be a partial success as well. Okay, so these three are possible. Okay, these three are possible. So any questions in these three? You got some idea? Overall test, how can you conclude whether it's a pass or fail or partial success or something like that? So we'll discuss this all these things in practicals also. But just for your understanding, I just made a note of these important points. Okay, because actually,
So, one question here.
yeah,
So, when you say transaction is failed, so what do you mean by that? Is it
transaction
the
is failed in
system?
sense I ran the test. There is some script issue or some
Yeah, script
application
issue
issue
or
because of which this request is not working, and I'm
okay.
getting some failure here. Okay, so for
Hmm.
example, I'm removing this intentionally. I'm removing this URL and I'm running it now. So I mean, just to get some error. So you see here, I got some error. Okay,
Okay.
and if you observe carefully, login is failed here. Okay,
Okay.
and we got the error and all that stuff. It's totally failed. And here also we see the error and all. We'll discuss all these things. But uh, you when you see some transaction failing, okay, when you see some transaction failing, like less than 2%, okay, then it's a good thing. So if it is exceeding 2%, then it's a fail.
Okay.
Simple.
It
Okay,
can be either script failure or request
anything.
response.
Be- because because if there are more failures in the test, that means we didn't run to the full volume. We didn't run with the full volume, or the login. Let's say okay, let's say there are three transactions: launch, login, log off, right? So launch run for 500 times here, login 100 times pass and 400 times fail. Now you imagine, like, how can you conclude it as a pass or something, because login itself is failing. And when it is a failed transaction or a failed step, how can I get the response time of it? How can I know what is the exact response time of it? How can I know what is the time taken for login? Because majority of the times it failed, and when it is failing, I cannot derive the actual response time properly. That's the reason uh, the pass rate of these transactions is also very, very important. Okay, so hope
Okay.
everyone understood the load test. So you'll get more clarity when we execute in practical session also. So if this test is a successful test, then you can go ahead and run any of these also, depending on the project requirement. Depending on the project requirement. For example, see, it's not every project we will run in all these tests. We'll run like two or three max. Okay, it all depends on project to project. So if this test itself is a failure, there is no point in running these tests. Okay, it doesn't make sense. So when load test itself is a failure, there is no point in running these type of tests. Very clear. Okay, it's not only specific to my project or your project or anything. It's a overall common standard. Okay, now with that, I will, if you don't have any further questions, I'll just move on to the next type of test. Actually, the reason why I choose notepad is because I don't have these points in my slides. I have what is per load test and all, but some points which I might add during the session, I will add it directly here. I don't have that in slide. That's the reason I didn't share these slides. Okay. So anyways, I'll share those slides later. So let's go to the next type of test, that is stress test. Now, what do you mean by stress test? See, the name itself is self-explanatory, isn't it? So you are applying stress on the application. Okay, you are applying more stress on the application. So stress test. Okay, how do you run the stress test? Simple. checking the performance of an application by applying more load or more volume, okay, volume or load, whatever it is, by applying more volume than the load test. Simple. So you want to check the performance, but the thing is the amount of load or the volume that you are going to test should be more than the load test. For example, here I am running with 500 users. Here I can run with 600, 700, 800, 900, 1000, 1100, 1200. Okay, and sometimes I can increase the load in such a way that it will reach to the maximum breaking point. Okay, that means at some point of time the application might crash also. So you want to identify, the client will say that, hey, uh, sometimes what will happen, uh, sometimes what will happen, client will say that, hey, can you find some breaking point for me? Okay, can you tell me where exactly my application is going to break? Okay, and you're getting my point. Client can ask us something like this, hey, can you tell me where exactly my application is breaking, at what point of time my application is breaking, either with 500 users or 700 users or 800 users, 1000 users. You can run a stress test. Okay, you can increase the load. Okay, uh, like one by one, like 500, 600, 700, like that, and tell client where exactly it broke. Okay, so I'll tell you one example here. Let's say there is a restaurant. Okay, let's say there is a restaurant. Let's say there is a restaurant. Uh, in that restaurant, there are 5 tables. In that restaurant, there are 5 tables. In those 5 tables, for those 5 tables, there is one helper. Okay, in those 5 tables, there is one helper, and that helper is actually taking care of that helper is actually taking care of all the 5 tables, food ordering and delivering. Okay, now, the owner of the restaurant decided to increase the number of tables from 5 to 7. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, so let's assume that the owner of the restaurant decided to increase the number of tables. Okay, decided to increase the number of tables from 5 to 7, because the owner assume that the crowd will be more, or the customers will be more, and the client intentionally decided to increase the number of tables from 5 to 7. Now the helper, okay, who was handling those 5 tables, like taking the food order and delivering the food and all that stuff, now he is managing 7 tables now. Earlier he was managing only 5 tables. Now the helper is managing 7 tables. Okay, now again there was a huge rush. The food quality was very good, and then suddenly the demand was more. Then the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 7 to 9. Okay, so when the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 7 to 9, the helper is still able to manage. Okay, he's still able to take the food order and deliver the food and that stuff. But the amount of time taken to deliver the food, or take the order and deliver the food, increased. So let's say earlier the helper was managing 7 tables, taking the food and delivering the food, approximately like average 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, every item, every order. Now because tables increased from 7 to 9, the delivery time also increased. Now it is taking like 45 minutes. Then again demand was more. Now owner decided to increase the number of tables from 9 to 11. Then the helper said, no, no, that's enough. I cannot do it anymore. Okay, I cannot handle 11 tables. I'm resigning. I'm quitting the job, and then leaving. So that means the breaking point is reached. So the helper cannot manage more than 9. Okay, the helper managed 9, that too with some performance issue, in sense like the delivery time was too late and all that stuff. The good number of max number of tables the helper could manage was only 7. Okay, 9 with some performance delay, and then 11 completely breaking. Like, the helper did not manage all those 11 tables at all. Okay, So what did you understand from this? The more stress that you apply on the system, at some point it will break. Yes or no? So you can test that with this approach, stress test approach also. Okay, like anything above 500, like 600, 700, 800, 1000, anything is stress only, because the capacity decided by client is 500, and then you are applying little more stress or a little more load or more load on it. It's a kind of stress to that application. Okay, so now, um, for how long we run this test? Same, 1 hour. Okay, for how long we run this test? 1 hour. What do we verify here? We verify the response times. Same thing. Okay, and everything like, so if client is giving us so and so, so and so, so and so SLA and all, we verify the response times. Perfect. Okay, we also some verify some other issues also, like verify the breaking point. Verify the breaking point. Okay, verify the breaking point. Verify the server issues. Okay, so verify the server issues. So these things are the mandatory things here. Verify the response times, verify the breaking point, verify the server issues, and so on. Okay, so checking the performance of an application by applying more volume than the load test. Okay, so 1 hour steady state, verify the response times, verify the breaking point, verify the server issues. Okay, any questions here? How do we verify? How do we find the server issues and all? We can use some APM tools and all. Whether it is breaking point or not, we can apply more load. Okay, so for example, uh, in the above test, uh, 500 users where where was the volume, was the load. Here uh, we can test with anything more than 500 users in terms of load. Okay, there are other ways also, but this is one important way. Okay, after to run the stress test. Any questions here? Simple. Did you guys understand like what is the purpose of it? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so you're stressing the application beyond its capacity. Simple. Okay, then third thing. Any questions so far? Are you guys okay with the stress test? Actually, these are very very important. Like in interviews, they will be asking you these questions. One second. Not sure. Sometimes my audio might break. That's the reason I'm checking. Okay, so I'm good. So I hope like you don't have any questions here. Now the next very very important thing is endurance or soak or duration. Okay, endurance or soak or duration test. Very very important one. So here uh, we actually check the stability of the application. So here I mentioned performance testing is measured in terms of speed and stability, right? So stability is the word that we will relate it to this type of test: endurance, soak, or duration test. Okay, so here simple, checking the stability, checking the stability of the application, checking the stability of the application by running the test, for longer duration. By running the test for longer duration. So checking the stability of the application by running the test for longer duration. So how long we will run the test here? So we can run like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day, so on. Okay, just give me 30 seconds, guys. Just give me 30 seconds. Okay, so hope you guys are able to listen. Okay, so checking the stability of the application by running the test for longer duration, like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day, like that. Okay, so now why we run this test for longer duration? To check the stability. How stable is the application when you run for longer duration? Okay, so I'll tell you one example. Now let's say you are running the test. You are running the test for 3 hours. 3 hours. Okay, running the test for 3 hours. Now, what exactly we verify here is first important thing is how the application is responding in the first 1 hour, second hour, and third hour. See, let's assume for launch transaction or step launch transaction, we got like let's say 1.5 seconds average in the first 1 hour. In the first 1 hour. So that means on an average in the first 1 hour of the endurance test, we got average 1.5 seconds for launch transaction. So second hour also must have similar response times. Okay, second and third hour also must have similar response times. In the first 1 hour you got 1.5 seconds average, and in the second 1 hour you got like 5 seconds average, 4 seconds average. That means there is some issue in terms of stability, because first 1 hour it went well, and then afterwards you saw some performance issues, like the response times, we are getting some high response times. Okay, everyone understood? So in order to make sure that the application is stable in the long run, okay, for the longer duration, we use this endurance or soak or duration test. Okay, any questions? Did you guys understand the basic idea behind this? So very important, and in most of the projects we generally run this type of test for sure.
So one question.
Yeah,
Who will decide the duration?
duration will be decided by the project, okay, or the like let's say or the organization that you are working for, or depending on the client requirement also. So let's say in my previous projects that I supported, we used to run for like 3 hours. The other projects that I supported, like we used to run for 5 hours. There was one project where I ran for 8 hours also. One day I didn't run, but I have seen people running for one day also. And I've seen like one or two projects long back, like 7 8 years ago, they ran for 3 days also. That's fine, but that is very rare. These are most common, 3 5 8. Okay. Now who I mean, which one you should select if you are asked to, if you are asked to run if you are asked to run an endurance test without confirming any duration and all, you can I suggest you to take at least five. Anything five, above five is fine, but at least five is enough. Okay. I mean, three also it's fine, but generally most of the projects they have five, something like that. Okay, it's up to you. I mean, if you are the performance tester, right? If you run for 3 hours and then you tell the client and the entire team that I ran for 3 hours in endurance test, that's fine. If they explicitly ask you to run for 5 hours, 8 hours, then you can run. Okay, but if you take a decision to run for 3 hours, you just inform them or let them know that, hey, we have run the test for 3 hours and these are my observations. No,
Okay.
the other important question is how much load is applied during this test? What is the load that we will apply here? So that is also one important question. In some projects, load is same as okay. So same as load test volume. Okay. So I can say like in okay, I can write simple words in like this to make you understand easy. In some projects, users are same as users count, or users are same as load test volume. In some projects, they take 75% of the volume from load test. Okay, so What do you mean by this? In some projects they take same as load test. That means in load test with how many users we run? 500. So here also we'll use 500. In some projects we take like 75%. What is 75% of 500? 350. So we run with 350. Again, if you are already working in a project and if they are following some approach, either of these, you can continue to follow the same thing. If you are the one who has to take a decision, I recommend you to take this option, because there is no point in decreasing the volume and running the test for its checking for its stability. I think this will be a good test if you apply the same load as the load test and then you run for longer duration like 3 hours 5 hours. It will be a good test. So you can choose either of these two depending on your project. Any questions? Okay. And here also we verify all these things. We will verify the response times. We verify server issues. We don't verify breaking point and all. I mean, sometimes um, it can any. I mean, see, anytime it can break anywhere. But then here we identify or we verify something called memory leaks. Okay. I'll tell you what is memory leak later in our upcoming sessions. We'll also verify memory leakage. Okay, because if you want to understand memory leakage, you need to understand a little bit of classes, objects, and how much memory is being used in, let's say, in Java and all that stuff. We'll discuss this later. Okay, not required now. So these are the important points in terms of endurance test or soak test or duration test. We can call it with any name. You should not get confused. In some projects they call soak test, in some projects they call endurance test, and on. All are same. Okay. Any questions? So three types of tests completed. We have remaining two. Okay. So hope you are good. No questions. Okay. Now the fourth type of test that we are going to discuss is scalability test. Uh, this here, if you remember, performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. So as the name indicates, we are the scalability is directly related to scalability test. So here we are checking the performance of an application by considering future growth. Okay, so checking the performance of an application by considering future growth. See, I'll tell you, um, this type of test generally client will ask you to run. Okay, it's not mandatory that we need to run always. We need to always run this test, but client will tell you if they want, if they need. So, see, let's say in load test, client gave you 500 users. Agree? Let's say in scalability test, now what client will think is, hey, in next 6 months or next 1 year, the number of users might increase, okay, by 100%. What do you mean by that? Client will give you one statement like this. In the next 6 months, the number of users will increase by 100%. What do you mean by that? So today we are running a load test with 500 users. Client is saying that in after 6 months, because because considering their business growth and all, client is saying business might improve by 100%. So that means users will increase by 100%. So that means users might become 1000 after 6 months. So considering the future growth, now itself we need to run with 1000 users. Okay, so depending on how much percentage the client is mentioning, based on that you need to run. So for example, client said number of users. Okay, the client said number of users might increase by 100% in next 6 months. Client said number of users might increase by 100% in next 6 months. Okay, so if load test if load test was run with 500 users, then scalability test will be run with 1000 users. Now you might get a doubt. So this is something, this is looking like a stress test, right? There also we are increasing the volume. Here also we are increasing the volume. Here also we are increasing the volume. What is the difference? See, the difference is very, you know, slight difference. I think I can tell you one point. See, if you're running this test, I mean, if you're running this test in any of the project, mostly you will not run this. If you're running this, I don't think this is required. Okay, so you can choose either of them, because here also we are increasing the load, here also we are increasing the load. But the thing is, here we are check we can go to an extent and check the breaking point where exactly it is breaking. But here we take the client input and consider the future growth and then run the load test. That's it. Okay, now I'll tell you one example. What happened in 2020, I was supporting for one of the banking project. At that time, I mean, when I say banking project, I was part of one of the performance testing team. So as a team, we were supporting multiple applications, like 15 to 30 applications we were supporting. Okay, we were doing the performance testing for 15 to 30 applications, okay, during the entire year. So you all know, like in 2020, there was pandemic that started, and I think in the month of March or something. So we all were working from home. You know that, okay? So in the month of May, I guess May or June, exactly, I don't remember. We had a client meeting, and the client said that due to due to the pandemic, the number of users going to the bank reduced drastically. So the users wanted to use the online application rather than going to the bank. So the number of users accessing the bank application increased. So client assumed, or client thought, that the number of users accessing their bank application will increase up to 400%. Will increase up to 400%. Okay. Did you understand the logic? The client assumed that the number of users might increase up to 400%. Okay. So now, okay, I'll tell you one example. So in the load test, let's say we ran with 500 users. Okay. Now, if client is saying that in the next 3 months, let's say due to pandemic and all, the number of users might increase up to 400%, then what we have to do as a performance tester? Anyone? What we have to do as a performance tester? If client is saying the requirement or the users might go up to 400% in the next 3 months.
Do a scalability test.
Scalability
Applying,
test, but how? I
applying
mean,
some 10% load every month or increasing.
so client said like
400,
users might
the
increase up
100%.
to 400%.
Yeah, 100% load every
So,
month.
okay, any other answer? You're getting the question, right? So now we ran the load test with 500 users. It's an existing project. That's fine. It was working fine. Now suddenly client came and said like in next 6 months user might increase up to 400%. Then what we have to do? So will you run? So if this load test was considered as 100% load test, okay, that is 500 users for 100% load test. Okay, then now after reading this line, you tell me how do you want me to test if the client is saying the users might increase up to 400%. So 100% load is nothing but 500 users. What client is saying? Client is saying the users might go up to 400% in the next 3 months. So what we have to do now? Should I run the 400% load test with 2000 users, because 400% means 500 into 4, 2000 users. Can I run a load test with 2000 users? Isn't it? So client is saying that the requirement may go up to 400%. Okay. So 400% load means 2000 users, correct or not? The problem here is you cannot directly run this. Can anyone tell why? I mean, you should not run this test directly.
So user will come gradually, not all. That will be spike type, spike test.
Okay. 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 I mean, let's say that is also valid. Any other point? Any other point, like from performance tester point of view, why we shouldn't run this test directly? So,
The load is more actually.
so if you run this test and let's say it is failing, okay, the application is not able to withstand the load, then your client will ask you, okay, if it is not supporting 400%, then what it's gonna support? Then do you have answer? So will, or the client might ask, will it support 300 at least? Will it support 200% at least? We don't have answer because we directly ran to 400%. That's the reason. First, you should run this 100%, and then if it is successful, then run a 200% load test. If this is also successful, then run 300% load test, and then if this is also successful, then run 400% load test. So here, if if this is passed, go to this. If this is passed, go to this. If this is passed, go to this. So if this is itself is failing, then what is the point of running with this much load? So you can directly go and tell client that, hey, your application max to max, it will support this number of users only. It is not going to support more than this. It's gonna fail at this point. So then what client will do? Okay, there were some applications, the same requirement we got. Like I already told you, we were testing like 15 to 30 applications, and then some applications failed here. Some applications passed here as well. Some applications failed here. So what they did, what was a quick fix? Any guess? What was a quick solution for that they provided? Because they didn't have time, because it was pandemic, all the users were accessing the application online. Okay, they don't have much time. So what they did, okay, what they do generally is they increase the capacity of the servers, okay, and to make sure that it is going to support this much load. So let's say the server is currently having 16 GB RAM. They might increase to 32 GB RAM. Currently, the CPU is like a dual core. They might increase to octa-core processors, RAMs. The configuration they will increase first. That's a quick approach, quick fix any team can provide. Okay, any questions? Any questions?
No.
Okay, so these are the four important tests, and then the last one is volume test. We'll cover it in like a couple of minutes. It's not that important, but let's do it. So the fifth one is volume test. So this is exactly, this is same as load test. This is same as load test, except uh, for the except that the data in the DB will be increased. Okay, so this is same as load test. That means we will run it for 1 hour. We will verify response times. We will use same 500 users. Everything will be same. But the only thing is the the data in the database will be increased. Okay, how? So I'll tell you what. So now I started now I started a college, a university, a big university. I have like 1,000 students, some admin team, faculty, HOD, everything. Like overall like 2,000, 3,000 members. Okay. Now in the database. Okay, we know that I mean, I hope you have little idea about database. Otherwise, we'll cover tomorrow. So the information related to the application will be stored in the database. Okay, for example, this application is there. So this username, password, okay, data, everything will be stored in the database. I have this WhatsApp, the WhatsApp data will be stored in the database, something like that. Okay, now will the data remain same ever, or will the data keep on increasing year by year?
Increase or
It will
decrease
increase.
both.
It can increase most probably. If the business is running well, it will increase, right? So for example, in the first year I said like there are 2000 plus students and all in my college, the university. After 5 years, the students might increase up to 7,000, 8,000. That means the data that I need to store and save in the database should be very huge, right? So now itself, what I'm going to do, I'm assuming that the data will increase in the database in future for sure. So intentionally with the help of DBA team, I'm going to insert like 1 lakh or 2 lakhs of records of data based on the client input, and then I'm going to run the load test, which is same as, I mean, which is nothing but a volume test. So here performance tester will insert data in the database with the help of DBA database administrator. Okay, and then run the same load test scenario. So you are just increasing the data in the database. That's it. Remaining everything is same as load test. There is nothing wrong. So only thing is when the data is increased in the database, whether there are any performance issues with respect to database, whether there are any slow running queries or high uh, long running queries and all that stuff. So that it's more relevant to the database performance. Okay. Any questions? We will do it very rarely. If you ask me, sir, recently when did you do? I don't, I think like around 6 years ago or something, in one project we performed this test. Otherwise, after that we didn't perform this test because when I run the load test, here itself I'll try to mimic the production data. So I'll tell you that in detail. I don't want to confuse you. So these are the different types of tests we have: load test, stress test, endurance test, scalability test, volume test. Okay, so this we'll see tomorrow, and this also I'll explain tomorrow. It's a simple basic test that we need to run before every test. So I'll tell you this tomorrow as well. These two will cover tomorrow, because tomorrow we need to understand what is a server, what is application server, what is database server, what is a web server, what is a protocol, and all that stuff. So after discussing all those concepts, we are going to understand how we are going to run the failover test. Very, very important one. Okay. Any questions? I'll share this notepad file if you want to. Okay, so that you'll have some clarity. Yeah.
Kaushik, I have one question.
Mhm.
So, for entire journey, what was the application we are going to cover?
We are going to cover multiple applications in terms of scripting, but for execution, for execution, we will be using one or two applications. But for scripting, we are going to learn like 4 to 5 applications.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay.
as I
Fine.
said, I mean, yesterday also I mentioned there is one very good application, Isha Training Solutions.com. Uh, I don't know like whether it is working or not today, but I'll get this up and running very soon. Okay, it's not. I'll check with the admin team. I'll make sure it is up and running probably by next session. Okay.
Fine.
Did I make any spelling mistake or?
Still application.
Uh,
There is a
s-
J there.
oh, okay. Sorry. Isha Training Solutions.com. If it's not working, that's fine. I'll get it tomorrow. No problem. Yeah.
Fine.
Okay. There might be some server down. That we can look into it. No problem. So
Thank you.
if you have any further questions, right, please do reach out to me on WhatsApp. If you if or for any payment related thing or anything like that, you can reach out to Kumar sir and the admin team. Yesterday also I shared the mobile numbers to you guys in the chat, or else you can just ping in the group. Someone will respond for you, respond for sure. Okay. So any other questions, especially who joined today?
What was the current version, LoadRunner current version? Kaushik?
In companies they are using like 2022, or very recently some companies are using 2023, but otherwise most of the companies are using 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we will also use LoadRunner 2022. Um, so if you have any other questions, do let me know.
So all the features for the means paid version and trial version.
Yes, yes. Everything
are-
will be there. All features will be there. Yes.
Okay.
But the only thing is, you can max run up to 50 users only in trial version.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start further concepts tomorrow. Very important ones from tomorrow. And I thank you everyone for joining the sessions and hope to see all of you in the upcoming sessions as well. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank you so
Kaushik.
much. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.